Hi everyone, welcome to Smoke Trails. Today I'm going to teach you how to make Italian sausage using pork shoulder. Now, I picked up this pork shoulder from the store. Usually it's a pretty inexpensive cut. It's well marbled and has a lot of fat on it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to start cutting this guy up. Usually I like to cut the fat off of the meat first and grind the fat separately. After you've got all the fat off, you're going to want to chill the meat again a little bit in the fridge or the freezer, just to let it cool off a little bit. For the rest of the meat, you're going to want to cut it into about 1-inch cubes, depending on how big your meat grinder is. If you have a smaller feed horn on your meat grinder, you typically want to cut it into smaller pieces. So as you can see, this is nice, well marbled. There's a lot of fat in there. It's going to add a lot of flavor to the sausage. I've separated the fat and the meat. Now what you're going to want to do is weigh the meat. I'm aiming for 10 pounds of fat and muscle meat. So I'm going to use this kitchen scale here. We have about 2¼ pounds of fat, and the rest is lean meat for a total of about 10 pounds. Now what we're going to do is grind the muscle meat through the grinder. Now I'm just using a hand grinder. Many of you will have an electric grinder, or may have one of those KitchenAid stand mixers with the grinder attachment. I just want to keep it simple in this video, so I'm going to show you how to do it with a hand grinder. So I have the grinder set up here, as you can see. So these are the parts of the grinder. This is the cutting blade. This is what's called the die, and you want to make sure your die is very sharp, and the way that you can tell that is you can run your fingernail across that, and if it catches, that means it's sharp. If your fingernail is not catching, then time to replace your die or get it recut. Usually it's cheaper just to get it replaced entirely. You want to make sure that you keep your die and the same cutting blade together so that they wear evenly, and when one is worn out, just throw out both, get a new sharper die and blade. So the blade goes in first, the die goes over top, and just go hand tight. You don't want to go too tight. Now I'm going to start cutting the actual meat. Now the whole purpose of grinding is not to grind and mash the meat and smear the fat. So if you're using one of those electric grinders and you have one of those push rods, try not to use that. Just cut it up into smaller pieces so that you can just feed it through the feed horn, and the grinder will do the work. If the grinder is working too hard, then the fat is going to get smeared and you're just not going to have a very good product. So we'll start grinding away here. And these hand grinders can get pretty tiring, but if you don't have a lot of money to set up your sausage making operation, then this is a good starter. Now that we've got everything ground, we want to mix in all of our spices and salt and cure. So as you can see, this is the ground fat. You can tell it's a lot whiter than the muscle tissue here. So I'm just going to leave this to the side for now. I'm going to mix all the spices in with the muscle tissue first, and then add the fat in afterwards, so we don't warm up the fat and smear it. It just makes for a better product. So here I've got 2 tablespoons of granulated salt and 2 teaspoons of cure. And the cure, also known as Prague powder, it does a couple things. It adds a sort of reddish pink texture to the final product of the sausage. It also adds a distinct taste. It's got a sort of salty, sweet taste to it. It also prevents the development and growth of microbes such as the botulism bacteria. And it just generally preserves the meat and allows you to store it for longer. So we have the salt here. We have 2 tablespoons of fennel, which is popular for Southern Italian style sausage. Mix that in. We have 2 tablespoons of coarsely ground pepper. Mix that in. a tablespoon of chili flakes, and about 4 to 5 cloves of crushed garlic. Mix the spices together. You always want to pre-mix everything before you add it to the meat. Now we'll add about half to the meat mixture here. And what you want to do is you don't want to smush the meat and scrunch it up like that. You want to just fold it. Just fold the meat on top of itself. When you squish it, some people take clumps of meat and they squish it in their hands, or they press down really hard. It smears the fat, and it leads to the fat sort of smearing and running out of the sausage, and just doesn't really make for a good end product. Add a bit more of the seasoning. Now I'm going to add in about a cup of dry red wine and a cup of ice water. The full recipe is 10 pounds of pork, so we're going to add in about a pound worth of the ice water and red wine. So I'm just going to put a little bit of that on. And when I say ice water, I don't mean big ice chunks in here. Just you know, you can put the ice in the water and then shake it around to get it really chilled, and then strain out the actual ice chunks before you put it in. So now we're mixing together the mixture, and it looks really liquidy right now, but the protein is going to start sucking up all of that moisture. Now we're going to start adding the fat in. So let's get all the water soaked up here. And as you can see, the mixture is very moist right now. It's glistening. And you want to get it to a very sticky, tacky sort of consistency where it's not glistening anymore. It's sort of a matte finish, and everything is sticking together. Right now you can see it's not sticking together very well. But once the protein and fat starts sucking up that moisture, then you'll start to see it getting really tacky and sticky. Okay, now you can see the mixture is getting really, really tacky and sticky, and it's sucked up all that moisture. Now what you're going to want to do before you start to stuff it into anything is take a chunk of it and throw it on the frying pan, taste it, and make any adjustments to the spices that you need. Okay, so I've got my little miniature sausage patty all fried up, and I'm going to taste it. That's good. It strikes the right balance of saltiness, and you can really taste the fennel. This is some good stuff. So now we're going to move on to stuffing the sausage. And for that, we're going to use the Dakotah water stuffer. And I'll bring that out in just a second. This is the Dakotah sausage stuffer. It's a water-powered / air-powered sausage stuffer. You can get an attachment so that you can use your air compressor to push the piston, or you can just hook it up right to your sink or bathroom faucet to pump water in, and the water will push the piston, and will push the batter onto the feed nozzle and into your sausage. What we want to do here to set it up is get the piston out of it. Now you can use any sort of sausage stuffer that you buy at you know, Cabela's or Bass Pro, or you know, an LEM stuffer. You can get a crank stuffer. You can use your KitchenAid sausage attachment, or your grinder even to stuff sausage. So to operate this, you just need to put the rubber O-rings on the piston, and use a bit of Crisco vegetable shortening to get it all lubed up. And we'll push this guy in here. Okay, now we're gonna load the cylinder with our batter here. Okay. And we'll put the cap on it. feed nozzle. And there we go. Now it's all hooked up and ready to go. The intake hose is hooked up to my bathroom sink. It's got a nozzle that controls the flow. And then it has an outlet hose that's draining into my shower. Okay, here's my natural sausage casing that I've had soaking overnight. When you get these, you want to rinse them very well in the sink first, and then typically you soak them overnight, but it depends on the type of casing you get. Look at the instructions that come on the package. This particular type is a medium-sized hog casing, and it comes with a sort of plastic guide that makes it a lot easier to put the casing onto the sausage feed nozzle. So I'm going to show you how that works now. So we have our Dakotah sausage stuffer here and the feed nozzle, and we just want to put the big handle end over the nozzle, snake it on, and then you sort of just slide the rest of the casing on until it hits the end. And then all you got to do is pull, and it just comes out like that. And you're pretty much all set up. Now I'm going to just operate this so it starts to feed water in. I have to turn the water on at the tap, so I'm going to do that right now. Now I just turned the water on at the tap, so it's coming into the intake tube. And I'm just going to open this up a little bit, just let a little bit of pressure. And as soon as I feel some of the batter coming out, I'm going to stop the flow. Okay, now we're going to tie the end of the casing. And this is the beauty of using the water stuffer, is that you can stuff the sausage by yourself, just by controlling the valve. So as you can see, the sausage is starting to come out. And we're just going to adjust the water pressure until we get a steady stream, and then we can start feeding it into the casing. Okay, as you can see, I'm getting a little bit of air in here, so I'm just going to give this a nick, and we just want to go just until it runs out of batter. There we go. Shut it off. Give it a cut and tie off the end. Okay. Now you can see you have your sausage here, and it's going to have some air pockets in it. So what I do is I either use a needle, or sometimes you can just use your knife if your knife tip is thin enough, and just give it some pokes wherever you see an air pocket. Okay, now we've got everything all stuffed. You can see we have some nice stuffed sausages here. They're a bit too long, so what I'm going to show you now is just the single link technique. All you want to do is sort of measure off, you know, a good size sausage that looks good, and then you give each of these points a little pinch, just very softly, and then you start twisting. You want to twist it until it's pretty tight, till it's almost ready to break. You don't want to go too much and break it though. Same thing, measure off, pinch, and now we want to go the other direction so we're not unwinding the other links. And these are ready to be smoked now, but I'm going to leave these in the fridge overnight to cure, let the curing salts do their work, and then I'll smoke them tomorrow.